What's up, man?
Not too much, dude. How are you? I love the Dawson jersey.
Oh man, I love the hockey Santa Claus. I miss you, man. I miss you,
Dude, how
brother.
you been, dude?
I'm doing okay. I'm doing okay.
Yeah,
Just filling the void with hardcore pornography and
as you do, as you do.
and your what we'll get to your what I call your sort of nostalgia channel. You've created like the nostalgia channel for me on your social media is the nostalgia
Oh,
channel for me. Everything you post, I feel like I grew up right next door to you, dude.
oh yeah. Well, with Instagram, I do birthdays and deaths, so it's like your childhood is just coming and going constantly. You know what I mean? It's just constantly being turned over. Meaning, not turned over, I guess. Just like everyone's dying.
Dude, it's fucked up, man. I see more of that on Facebook than people are announcing their parents are gone or their aunt or it's crazy, dude.
I understand that more now. I think before this kind of situation we were in, I was a little harsh on people who would be so like share such personal information about us, like a spouse or a parent dying, when it's like I don't even know you that well. Like we're friends on Facebook. Like what does that mean? But I understand now this is a and even then it's a way to reach everybody at the same time. You know what I mean? It's a way to get the word out immediately, say your piece about it, and then let other people know and let's start their grieving process. But it's just
Well,
it's a little weird.
I felt this similar to you. Uh, I was like, I don't think I so much was hard on them, but I was like, holy shit, I'm not that. I would never do that.
Yeah. I guess
I would
it was
never
more
do that.
that like I can't that's nobody's business. Do you know what I mean? Like I always think like and again, that some
I
people are
don't,
like that, man. Some people share everything they do on social media,
dude, definitely.
and that's
But
what that can be for that too. It's not like I'm not judging it. I don't have to look at it if I don't want to.
well, sometimes probably, I'm going to try to be a little bit of an optimist here, just to counterpoint because I could be the pessimist if you were the optimist.
I'm not.
Um,
Well, I wasn't. I'm not trying to be pessimistic.
no, I know.
Oh, okay.
Just in relation to your
Yes.
perspective, I feel like some people do get actual help from other people. Like they'll throw out a message in a bottle, and someone will come to their aid. Or I'm not so much unless I know somebody personally. I'm not somebody who's gonna go, hey, call me if you. I'm just not like that. I mean, we're
Yeah.
entertainers. I don't think we don't move from that.
I to speaking exactly to what you're saying, we're entertainers. It's like hard to sort of then like be a person, I guess, at times. But what I think is, because I agree with you, if I don't know somebody, it's hard for me to reach out. I wouldn't be like, hey, call me if I don't know you, and I'll. But if I see somebody struggling that like somehow is in my feed, I will like private message them if they follow
Oh, John.
something like, hey, I don't have any answers, but if you need a laugh and you have an email address, I can send you my CD.
Oh, that's
So
nice. Hey,
it
by the way, I don't want to diminish the level of healing that you have brought to me. I got to tell you, dude, the level of healing that you have brought to me just through your Facebook page, uh, I laughed so fucking hard. I'm probably your top. I don't know if I'm as visible as the other people are in your shit, but oh man, I mean, you are, and it's funny because like right now, the No Idea Zone people are going to get to see this little serious side of you. That's like this very sincere, serious side of you. But holy shit, dude, you have it on lock with the goofy, silly shit. I'm like, God, if John was just around all the time, you don't
well,
show that other part.
Well, I think I've gotten better about showing the other part, especially with like the new podcast I have, and just sort of trying to integrate positivity into it, you know. But the goofy shit is like you say, you wish I was around all the time. Like that's what I think the positive takeaways for something like Twitter is. It's like I am around all the time, meaning I'm online all the time. And if you know, I go back. It's funny because it gets narrowed down, but there's like 7 or 8 people now that I'm just like they're just that's my whole feed because I just everything they do, I'm like, oh, that's hilarious. I love that. I love that. I love that. Like,
Dude, let me tell you something. You're the guy who, when, if and when you become massively famous, people are going to be grateful. They're going to be like, you're going to be like a Bill Murray type mythical character who people are like, then you make them feel better. I'm telling you, dude, people are going to be grateful that you're around because you bring just this level of you and Fielding Edlow, but Fielding Edlow for a different reason. She just destroys her husband online, and it makes me fucking laugh. And especially being alone right now, it makes me feel better that I'm alone.
I love that though. That's great though. But see, that's her using her gift to as power. Like it's
I don't
funny.
know if it is a gift for her. It might be a gift and a curse too, whatever is going
Well,
on over there. But
I mean, I guess I don't follow the feed, but I'm hoping it's all in fun and it's just kind of like you know,
she wrote one that said, I don't want to get too much off on Fielding Edlow on your episode, but she wrote one that said, let me see if I can recall. She goes, I have to set my Apple phone timer to remind myself to touch my husband.
that is probably more honest than most people are willing to go.
Oh,
But
that's why. But John, like, let's get back to you here. You are just a fucking frolicking sprite of fucking nostalgia and fun on Facebook. I really like. I see. I mean, it's like you're reading my mind, dude. It's very bizarre. Lee Smith.
well,
Okay, you're Lee
oh,
Smith.
dude.
So
But you know why I posted that because I wanted to post that before Lee Smith dies, before something bad happens to Lee Smith. I want to be like, hey, this guy fucking rules, and he did
before, like
so
he's telling you
badass.
ill. You're just like getting out in front
No,
of this shit.
dude, because like I feel like that's something social media has shown me. It's like I've got all these great things to say about people. Why am I waiting until those people aren't around anymore? Why would I? Because I'm trying to do it with regular people too. Like I don't mean like regular people. I mean like friends and like appreciate the people while they're here instead of going, oh, I should have, you know, posted that thing for his birthday or I should. It's like, no, dude, just love what you love. Go crazy because
Well,
people
it's
because
also
that post everyone
yeah.
was like, oh yeah, Lee Smith, and everyone because everyone loves Lee Smith, and it just takes a little bit of reminding, like, oh yeah, there are badass dudes like Lee Smith out in the world.
That haven't been admitted into the Hall of Fame. Okay, so people who are watching
He
this
is.
who
He's a Hall of Famer now.
is he a Hall of Famer?
Yeah, he went in. Yeah,
Okay, so has forgive
yeah.
me, Lee.
No, 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 no. Yeah,
Lee and
but
your loved ones, forgive me. I'm a huge Chicago Cubs fan. I should have known that. So by the way, I was getting into baseball. I don't know how if we're the same age. I just turned 45.
I am gonna be 46 in April.
Okay, so I don't know what age you got into baseball, but I started getting into baseball when the first consciousness I had of the Chicago Cubs was the year Ryan Sandberg was MVP, the year that we got, kept from going to the World Series by the San Diego
84.
84. So Lee Smith was there then. I think he was there then.
He was. Yeah.
Um, but I also remember toward the end of his Cubs career, they were just launching balls off of him, and he
But he didn't even stop in Chicago. He went played for the Red Sox. He like played for 6 more teams
yeah.
after the
And
Cubs. So
didn't he play for someone before us? He played for.
he might have been a Philly, but I don't know.
Okay, he might have been drafted by somebody else, and then.
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't have that info, but I know he played for the Expos at one point. You know,
Okay, so like Dawson, he played for the Expos.
yeah, but but Dawson was the opposite. Dawson's career looked like it was over, and then he came to Chicago, and then basically had the career that everyone remembers.
See, I remember it a little differently than you. I think Dawson was in like he was the only him and Tim Raines were the only Expos player that were all stars every year. He might have gotten hurt in Montreal. He didn't want to be in Montreal. Is the point?
You're right. He was an all-star. He was obviously him and Tim Raines were Hall of Fame players with the Expos by themselves, you know. But then, and I say that people remember, I mean Chicago, like he came. People were like, "Well, we're giving this guy money," and he played for the league minimum. He played for a last place team, and he won MVP
Yes,
of the
he
league
did in the late '70s, right?
with the last no in the '80s. With the Cubs were in last place, and Andre Dawson was
Oh,
MVP.
87, 87.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
He hit 50
So,
home runs, John. I mean, come on.
but I mean, but on a last place team, that's never happened before. Since that, the last place team garner gets the MVP is playing for the last place team. That shit doesn't
That's
happen.
very rare. It's very rare.
It also speaks to the game at that time, which was a little bit different and looked specifically at people's accomplishments and how they were able to lift up clubs, and it wasn't all just numbers. And but his numbers do check out. I mean, it's not like he was.
It was different, and in a lot of ways, man, it was so much better. I mean, we were the remnant of the '70s generation. We were the final death rattle
People were
after the
still
great
smoking cigs in the dugout when we were watching Mets games as kids. You know, there was still cocaine was rampant in the '80s in baseball. You know, there was big mustaches. It was a different time, but and the game was different. But I don't think the game is necessarily worse or anything. I just think it's different now. You know,
It's
it's evolved a little bit. That's all.
well, money when bigger money gets into things that just never. We could go down a whole rabbit hole with that.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
Money ruins it, but
well, yeah, I know, but if it's the money's coming to you, it's a whole
then it's
different
good.
thing.
Then it's
Yeah.
good. Yeah. No, I know. And when I say ruined it, I mean I'm not saying don't pay the players or they don't deserve what they're making. I'm just saying like the greed of it all becomes, you know, you don't see a guy like Derek Jeter who plays for one team for 20 seasons anymore. It's just such a rare thing. It's just like you go where I mean, the Cubs won a World Series in 2016, and they're going to have almost none of those guys
They're going to
back next
dismantle
season.
that team. I know.
And they should have won 3 World Series with those guys. That should have been a back to back to back thing.
Absolutely.
And then
Well,
you can
hey,
dismantle.
guess what? The Chicago Bears should have won 3 Super Bowls back to back, probably.
Yeah, that was a crazy lightning in a bottle that looked like it should have been a dynasty, you know.
Yeah. I watched a documentary on that. And by the way, just for the humor of this, they say when you start talking about sports, you lose half your audience, but I don't really care. I want to have a conversation I want to have. And if people want to have it with me, let them. If they don't, fuck it, you know.
Well, it's about sports, but it's also a little about more.
Yeah, it's a little more if you can bear with us here. I watched read a documentary. Wow. I watched a documentary that's about how it is these days.
Yeah, I know. I wouldn't even have flinched.
Um, yeah, like McMahon showed up. I mean, one of the things was McMahon showed up after the '85 season, just like bloated and out of shape and just completely not ready to play. And also Ditka came on and did an interview and he said, you know, a lot of these guys started getting endorsements and they all started thinking they were more important than they were after the famous '85 season. And they sort of went in their own sort of on their egocentric path, you know, not just McMahon. So, you know, the money got
It's like
involved.
a band.
Yeah,
It's like
I
a
guess
band.
so.
You're together. You're kind of like it's almost like your brothers or sisters or whatever, and then you know you go through this grueling thing of like touring and being in a van and having to do all your and the Bears worked it and then they win the biggest possible trophy you can win in football, and then you're right, then someone's like, hey, why don't Fridge get over here, man, we're gonna have you do like 45 commercials, and then we're gonna ignore Gary Fensick for 12 months, and then we're gonna bring this guy up, and it's like yeah, I could see that being a huge issue as to why it didn't keep going.
Yeah, and would be remembered as because you know the Bears are regularly touted as the greatest single team to ever play. I mean, even after all these years,
The 85 Bears, yeah.
85 Bears, which the Bears have a terrible, I mean, really, it's been a terrible franchise, but
Before that and after that, it's literally been fucking awful. Like awful.
yeah.
Like one of the worst, poorly run. I don't know. I don't know how. I don't watch football anymore, but I don't know how I did it for so long. It's such a pathetic organization,
Well, you grew up like me during the 85 Super Bowl shuffle.
dude. And that was like the thing in comedy, right? Where you do comedy forever, and then you get like one thing where you're like, "Ooh, maybe I should keep doing this for the rest of my life." So it's like you're rooting for the Bears. They suck. You're like, "What? Forget this." They win the Super Bowl. You're like, maybe this could happen again.
Okay, so
Probably not in my life.
that's a good segue to what was the one thing in comedy that kept you
Well,
happened? What was your one thing in comedy then? That you have to have that one thing.
the first one was Gotham. I had been doing comedy for about 8, 9 years, and I'd gotten, I'd gotten out on the road a little bit. I'd done some stuff here and there, but I was starting to think like, well, maybe I'm not the guy that's going to get picked to be any bigger than this. So I don't know. Maybe 10 years is the end of the road for me. And then all of a sudden I get live at Gotham kind of out of nowhere. And I was like, oh. And then once you do that in my head, I was like, oh, well, next year I'll get a half hour, and then the next year I'll get an hour, and then I'll do. And it did not progress like that, obviously. But that one thing, that Gotham got me through to the next TV spot, which
It kept your hopes alive to the next.
it made me, I think it made me realize that even if I wasn't going to be like a household name, I could still reach people, and people would still laugh and relate to what I was saying. And in the end, that's all I really need. I understand that now. That's all I really need. I'm sure back then I was like, I need this.
You had a level of high ambition, a
Yeah.
naive high ambition. I think you wouldn't be the first or the last.
I was going to say, I think that kind of, you sort of have to have that. You have to think like, oh yeah, well, I can do this, and I can, there has to be something there. As much as we like to self-deprecate and put ourselves down, in the back of your head, there's got to be something that's like, yeah, I mean, I'm keeping up with these guys, so.
Probably the truth is you wouldn't make it as far as you have if you didn't have that very high goal.
If you were realistic, I would have gotten out a day after
and a wife, dude, like that.
Dude, the Haha Cafe.
Is that where we met, by the way?
I think we met at the Comedy Union, which I don't think will ever say that about anybody else ever again. Maybe you and Matt Dittman are the only people that I still would look at face to face and go, oh yeah, I think we met at the Comedy Union. Like,
so bizarre. Cafe. Go ahead with the Haha Cafe.
Well, it was my third. I'd taken the bus there. I'd done some open mics, and they were like, "Oh, you're kind of funny." So right there, I'm like, "Oh wow, there it is." And I'm so naive. I came from Echo Park to North Hollywood on a bus, like 3 buses, and I think that what I'm looking at is the entire pool of Los Angeles open micers. I don't know any better. It's the first open mic I've ever been to in my life. And I'm like, oh, this must be where all the open, like Los Angeles is massive. I could walk outside right now and throw a battery and I would hit a stand-up comic in the head. So the fact that I thought that I was looking at the pool of people, I was like, these were going to be my peers, is so laughable now, because that was a pebble in a gravel pit. It was like funny. But so I did a couple of those open mics, and my confidence, I'm keeping up with these guys on stage. I'm not doing anything that I'm good. I'm natural. They were like, do you want to come back and do a Saturday night show? I was like, yeah, fucking finally. Like, I've been doing it for a week and a half or whatever. I'm like, finally. I go there. They're like, hey, first of all, should have been, I didn't know any better, but Jack was like, can you get some people here? And I was like, and I go, yeah, of course.
By the way, he's getting a guy to bring people on a Saturday night. This is not a good sign for this comedy club. That on a Saturday night.
To his credit, though, I think he already he already had a pretty good Saturday night show going on. And when he asked if I could bring people, I took it to the extreme. And because I was like, well, I've been doing this, I'm getting pretty good at it. I was a production assistant at the time. I worked for a
Yeah, you
company
worked on
called,
Punks, right?
no, I was a producer on Punk, but before all that, I was a PA with a company called Rocket Science. I worked on Temptation Island and
Oh,
a couple
wow.
other things. And
I didn't know
I'd, I'd
that.
been a,
Go ahead,
I'd
though.
been a PA at the U.S. Comedy Arts Festival for HBO and a couple other things. But I invited everybody I worked with, all like 40 people, and they all came. And I walk in, I get out of my friend's car and I walk in, and the sign says, the marquee was Latino Comedy All-Star Night. And I was like, oh, okay. And I walk in and I'm like, I think I'm on the bill. And they're like, yeah, John Huck, right. And I was the only white guy on the bill, which is fine. It was fine. But I didn't have any confidence. So I was like, when am I going on? They're like 8:10. And it was like 10 to 8. So I was like, okay, so I pound 3 beers. And then they're like, because they see how many people I brought. There's like 40 people in the back. The whole back is smashed. It's a sold out show. It's smashed with the people I work with. So he's like, we're gonna put you on a little later. So I have
So
like
you want to
4
keep
more.
your people there.
Yeah, yeah, but I don't know that. I'm like, oh, he thinks he wants me to go on later. So I have 4 more beers. Then he's like, you're gonna go even late. I go on after like 9 beers to a audience that has just been obliterated by Latino comics getting up there and high energy. Just, the room was like up, and I got up there. I forget everything I'm supposed to say. I get one joke out. I'm like, I bet you guys are wondering why Chris Elliott is here at Latino Comedy All-Star Night. And that gets a laugh a little bit. And then someone yells, "You're white." And I just go, "Mom?" And then that got a laugh. And then they left me up there for 15 minutes, dude. Now I know anyone listening might think 15 minutes does not sound like a long time, but I've been doing comedy for like a month. I had 3 minutes of material, which was all about pooping at work. I never got to it. And 15 minutes of, like awful. All you could hear was my roommate going, ooh, oh, that was it, man.
Tim,
But I
Tim.
got it. It was Tim. It was Tim. And Tim, I walked outside and I was smoking cigs at the time. So I lit up a cig and I was like sitting there like horrified, sweating.
All the
Just,
people you work with have come to see this, by the way. You're
dude,
going to have
it
to see
was
them. You're going to have to see them at work.
a whole other thing I hadn't thought about until right then. You know what I mean? Like, this might not go well. Was never in my fucking brain. But Tim comes out and well, you got that out of the way. Or he goes, that's over. And I thought he meant, you should never do comedy again. And I go, yeah, I guess you're right, huh? And he goes, what? And I go, I guess I shouldn't do it. He goes, no, 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 no. I'm saying you got that thing over with. Like, the worst you're ever going to do on stage, that was it. You can't do any worse than that. It's only uphill. You're
Oh,
only
what
going
a
up.
friend, dude.
And I literally was like, I'll never forget it because it drilled into my head. Like, I just tanked. I've tanked bad, real bad,
Never like
but
that.
never like that. Never like that, dude. Never again. But it was true. It was like, you got to get that out of the way. And I'd had some beginner's luck, which a lot of people have. You get a couple times on stage, people going, oh man, that's good.
Oh, yeah.
Not realizing that it needs work. It
Yeah.
needs,
And you were how old then? Because you were already a grown man. You were already
yeah, I was like 24.
okay. So but you
I
were young.
moved out to, I moved out to LA at 24 years old. So I was probably 24, 25 when I started.
Okay. That's still really young, dude. I didn't
It
realize.
is when looking at it now, but like also when you hear about, you hear about the greats like Eddie Murphy and Chappelle being like
Starting at 15.
14 years old in the clubs and
Yeah.
their mom. I didn't, I mean, you always think about that in hindsight, but I guess I might have tried going to Chicago from the burbs and trying my hand at it in the suburbs. But my fear when I think about that the fact that I just I just moved to LA because I was like, oh, I want to be involved in the entertainment industry. It was literally as far as I'd thought it out. I didn't move to LA to do comedy. I didn't move to LA to be an actor. I moved to be involved somehow. I thought acting was going to be the thing. But I mean, it is. I mean, I still do it, but like the comedy thing, I was like, my mom pushed me into it. And when I started doing it, I was like, God, I fucking love this. And had I gone into Chicago and tanked, I might have never tried it in LA. You know what I mean? So I think the night, like you said, being naive and just having in my brain, like, hey, some people laughed at some shit I said last night. I'm funny. Like, was enough to get me through it.
Well, that was enough for all of us at the beginning. Whenever we,
Yeah.
I would get laughs. I started a few years before we met, so I had been doing it a few years.
You were already like, as far as I could tell, like grizzled by the time I'd met you.
Shit, and I was probably about 25 when we met. So
Yeah.
you moved to LA a few years before I did.
But you'd already been doing it.
I'd been doing it, and looking back, I had huge blessings because I got to go on the road at 24, 23, 24. I got to feature. I wasn't a feature, by the way, just so you know. I didn't tell anybody that. I conned my way in. I'd send a tape and someone would say, we'll hire you, and I'd drive to fucking Omaha. I'd drive to Omaha, and feature and stay in their condo. And they were, by the way, that was also a rare thing now, but it wasn't as rare back then. They would hire a feature that didn't travel with the headliner. That was a little more common back then, so I got really lucky in that. But you got blessed with this. You had production work. You were working. You had a job. You were like, that's a solid thing to have, man.
I got real lucky with it being my roommate, Tim Prey. This kid, we met in college. His uncle is a director. We moved out here, and he was the one who started doing set dressing. And he was like, I'm like, what is that? He's like, it's like glorified move. You just move furniture. You make sure the set looks how they want it for Ken. He's explaining it to me. He got me my first PA gig. I was going to take a job as an insurance underwriter with Farmers Insurance. And I had done my interview, and I was a temp there. And they were like, we'll give you a laptop. And I was like, oh, cool, my own laptop. And I was like, I guess this is what you do. You get a job.
Oh, shit.
That afternoon, Tim calls my desk because I didn't have like a cell phone or anything really. And I pick up the phone and I'm like, yeah. And he goes, hey, man, how would you feel about like being a production assistant for me and driving a van load of crap out to Aspen for the U.S. Comedy Arts Festival and then driving comedians around in town as part of the transportation department? And I was like, yep, I'll be home in an hour. And like literally, like I was like,
And went and did that.
I didn't quit because it was a temp gig, but I left that afternoon and did not return until months and months later when I needed temp work again in between gigs, and they took me back because they liked me. But yeah, I didn't take the underwriting gig, and that PA gig led to me being around comedy, seeing more comedy, meeting extremely famous comedians, and loving what looked like the lifestyle of just fart jokes and beer and tits, you know what I mean? Which is like when you're 24, you're like, oh, that's all I want.
I mean, you've grown into this. You were always a super sophisticated guy, but we need shit. We need extracurricular activities like that for therapy. You can't. You need to have that, John.
Well,
and by the way, you're a super bright guy and a super sensitive guy, wrapped in this sort of a camouflage of a drunk, a bar fly. I have other friends like you. That's how I know that. I have friends who are intellectual guys, but they're sort of disguised as hippies,
Well, it's funny. I went back to northern Wisconsin where I went to college to visit years ago, and I'd been living out in LA for years at that point. But I went back and I had like a bigger beard, my hair was longer, and I was wearing like a flannel, and I was fat, whatever. And a couple people were like, "Dude, so you live out in LA?" And I'm like, "Yeah." Like, are you like the only person that looks like you're from Wisconsin out there? And I'm like, "No." They're like, "Because you don't look like you're from LA." Like they were blown away by the fact that I walked around looking like this in LA.
They think everybody looks like Rob Kardashian.
You think you go through like a car wash and you come out and it's short and kept up and you're like, yeah, no, man, I only smoke these kind of cigs now. It's like, no, LA is
You're going to come back like John Waters.
Pencil thin mustache. I'm like, how you doing? That's more like it.
Or looking like a Cohen brother, black rim glasses, you know, a skateboard.
Skinny jeans.
By the
Yeah,
way,
I mean,
there's a lot of those guys that look, by the way, if you're watching this and you're not in LA, John Huck is just somebody who had an identity and was not transformed by LA. There are a lot of people who go through the car wash and come out looking like a Cohen brother with a skateboard. We call
but
them
there,
alternative comedians.
you know what I found is there are even more people I'm discovering that are going the other way and looking like me that never looked like me before. They, they were clean cut and all of a sudden beard, a little bit more, a little grizzled, and then all of a sudden I'm seeing them in the audition room and I'm like, oh,
You were
okay.
decades ahead of your time, John, and you need to be recognized as such. You need to
I
be
would,
recognized. It was John Huck who was the trailblazer, who never got the recognition he deserved. He
I
was the Tom
assume
Waits of his generation.
we could do some sort of statue, put it by the Fonz in Milwaukee.
Where? What part of LA would you put the statue in? North Hollywood?
I wouldn't know. I wouldn't put it in North Hollywood. The Arts District? No. No, Huck.
No, right by the bus and train station, like right in front of.
Which I've taken to get to the haha to do open mics. That was my first set. I literally read bus directions from a notebook on stage. I go, oh, look, this is how I got here. I go, the number 2. People start laughing because they're like, you came from Echo Park on a bus? It was like, not knowing how ridiculous that sounded at the time. I was like, yeah, don't people take the bus? Like, no.
Right. The people who moved out to do comedy and do acting would not do that shit. But the guy who moved out just to be around entertainment.
I just want to be part of it, man.
That's why you should be really famous. That's why people will be grateful. I'm telling you, people will be grateful because there's a lot of people who just want a guy like that present in their, I think a lot of fame is that, people just
That's
want,
interesting.
okay,
Yeah.
there's people who gravitate toward a lifestyle. So they want to live vicariously through somebody's lifestyle. But there are a lot of silent sort of audience who aren't real loud and represented, who really genuinely want identities and personalities who remind them of themselves or remind them of people they know.
Dude, that's what I'm hoping for this. Like I said, I just started this podcast, but that's kind of the whole thing is like, you can, every week, man, it's going to be me talking about something that I love, whatever it is, like something that's great, inspiring, positive, and then interviewing somebody who is involved in that thing somehow. So if you are looking to have someone like me in your life, every Friday you can find me on YouTube. But I mean, like that's, and I don't mean like that as a plug. I mean it like this is, you can use social media and this technology. Like we would have never done this before. You would have called me. We would have gone back and forth on dates and times and tried to figure out a time to get to a studio somewhere to record this. But I mean, I connected with people right off the bat when this pandemic started happening that I hadn't seen in years through Zoom. You know what I mean? Like we can use this technology to stay connected. We can use this technology. It's not the same as hugging someone, but it's human interaction to a certain extent. And then the idea that if you're looking for a certain thing or a certain type of people, or you like a certain music, you can find groups and areas online that stuff is relevant and present, and you can be a part of it. So that's my whole thing, is just encouraging people to try to like not just shut yourself in or isolate yourself or think that because you live alone that you're alone. You know what I mean? Because there are a lot of people that live alone, but we are all, because in the real life we are all connected, whether you think everything's interconnected or not. It's like a bass string, you know what I mean? You slap it and like the vibrations come up, and like some people are small vibrations, some people are big vibrations. It's the ocean, it's the waves, and you crash on the shore, you come back and you do it again and again and again. There is no death, it's just a cycle. So we're all connected, but this pandemic has made people feel isolated because they don't feel that connection. And with the internet, if you utilize it, you can use it in a positive manner and stay connected to people that matter.
Well, John, that's beautiful, man. Thank you for that. Meridians of human connection, basically. So I want to, first of all, give a shout out to Tim.
Absolutely.
Tim, you're a great guy. I'll never forget you for the little bit of time we spent together watching.
He'll never forget you either, dude. He follows you online. He's always like, "Hey, I saw Steve Lolli online." Like dude, you left
Oh
an
man.
impression, bro. You left an impression. Just watching The Simpsons that one morning was all it took to lodge you in Tim's brain for life.
Well, Tim, I remember vividly the morning you and John drinking beer in the morning, crashing on the couch. I had nowhere to stay. I actually crashed on your couch because I was living in
You
my
said that we were at Mixed Nuts, and you were like, "I'm gonna go live in I'll sleep in my car." I go, "Yeah, but really, where are you going to sleep?" And you're like, "My car." I'm like, "Do you want to sleep at our house?"
Yeah, I didn't even ask to sleep at your house. That's how.
No, I thought you were kidding. I was like, "You're gonna go sleep in your
No,
car? Get the
no,
fuck out
dude.
of here!"
And you know what, man? I would have done better if I had known how to ask people for shit, like basic shit. I would have done better. So we all had our 20s quirks, you know. That was my 20s quirk. I didn't know how to ask for anything because my dad was a real conservative guy and he wouldn't give anything. Like, you know, my dad was like Reagan era Republican, and so a great dad, by the way, is a great dad, but I'm not used to like getting. I'm not a trust fund person, you know, with that.
Right.
I'm not like I
You've
don't
been
know.
on your own for a long time.
Yeah, so I don't know how to ask for just basic shit, you know. So that was my kind of like 20s thing, learning, you know. But I want to give Tim a shout out, and I want to hope that you people out there watching, or who will be one day watching, have John Huck as a presence in your a comedy presence in your life that's as good of a friend to you as Tim is to John. That's
Oh,
my wish
that is a good wish.
for the culture to have that, because you are a Bill Murray. Like, I know you're this guy, but online you really do have, you exude a Bill Murray-ish, not that you look like Bill Murray, but you do exude a lovable guy. You kind of come across as the guy who will just get a call and go to the party, or just decide, make a spontaneous. No, you might not even be that guy. I'm just saying that you come off as like a guy who's so fun and funny. And there's by the way a therapeutic part to that. I don't do that, John. All I use social media for is to post podcasts, and I don't use it for anything. I don't even.
Well,
I'm hard pressed to fucking to grind out jokes on social media. So
well, let me tell you something, because this was said to me. When I first got on Twitter, I put it off. I hated it. I didn't want to be involved in social media. I had Facebook. I was annoyed by that at the early stages. I get on Twitter and I start doing what you're talking about, posting where my shows are going to be, when I'm going up, who else is on the show. I go to the Improv one night and I see Nikki Glazer, and she goes, "Oh, it's really
hey,
nice to get
John,
on."
John, your
Yeah.
audio. I don't know if you're if
Oh, is this
yeah,
better?
that's better. Yeah, that's better.
So I put off getting on Twitter. I finally get on, and I'm doing what you're talking about, posting dates of shows and who's on the lineup and all that. I go to the Improv and I see Nikki Glazer, and she goes, "Hey, it's real good that you're on Twitter. Can I give you some advice?" And I go, "Yeah, what?" She goes, "No one fucking cares where you're going up." And I'm like, "What?" And she goes, "Just be funny. Be as funny as you can be on Twitter." And I was like, "But what if," I go, "what if people steal my jokes?" She goes, "You're fucking insane." And I was like, "What?" She goes, "It's time stamped. You can't, like, what? You're putting it out there. It's that is actually proof that you wrote the joke at that point," which is, she didn't tell me. I figured out on my own. But from that point on, I was like, be funny. And that's all. I mean, I do. I put out serious stuff too. I'll put out suicide prevention posts. I put out Black Lives Matter posts, but I'm like, and I mean that stuff, but at the same time, I do keep it fairly light and fairly goofy and funny, because that's what I like. And that shit makes me laugh and it makes my friends laugh. And that's what I've always wanted to do. So
You might have to just hold that. I mean, our producer can fix it in post. So
not audio is hard to fix in post.
yeah, this man knows this. He knows this. But we have a genius producer, man. He's amazing.
Who's your producer?
Graham Harther.
Oh, okay. I
Yeah.
like that name.
Yeah, I know. Richard and Graham Harther are the producers of this. Let's give them a shout out. Why not? This is a perfect
Wow.
opportunity. He's straight out of St. Louis. He probably doesn't want a whole lot of publicity, so he might beat this out in the final cut. But Graham, if you're up for sending you some love, you're doing a great job, and please fuck with the audio on this one.
He's from St. Louis. That sounds like such a British name.
I don't
Am I
know,
wrong?
man. I don't know. I'll have to get to the bottom of that and report back to you.
Important
John,
stuff.
question. Do you
Yes.
remember do you remember the year you started at the first year you first started comedy at the Ha Cafe? And can you give us a shout out of names of comics who you haven't seen or heard from in a long time who maybe started with you?
I would have to say that it was probably November-ish of 2000 or a little before that I started doing comedy. So that would be right around the time because the Haha was the first place I went. So that would be like November or October of 2000. And as far as comics who aren't around anymore, there was a guy named Christian, blonde hair. Do you know who I'm talking about? Oh,
No, but this is the funniest. Like you're like trying to name the give the
but it's like
identity of a mugger or something that you saw.
it's just blonde hair. He's about 5'8".
You're like, I'm a police sketch artist,
He walked with a limp. He did a lot of Crocodile Hunter jokes. I can't remember the guy's last
but he
name,
did
but
do Crocodile Hunter jokes, didn't he?
he did do that for sure. But he was the first guy to see me at the Haha and go, "Hey, I have a show at the Comedy Union that I do. Why don't you come out and do that show?" So I did that show. So that's when I started doing other shows that weren't open mics, you know. Um, so I can't remember Christian's last name, but he's one of them. And then it's hard because the comics that, like, if I didn't see you anymore, I'd be like, where'd Steve Lolli go? Because you're like an interesting character to me. You know what I mean? You're a guy that I like to keep tab. I like to know what you're up to, just because you're all over the fucking place, and it's always going to be a good story. And it's interesting to me. Whereas some people, I'm like, yeah, I don't care what that person is doing, and I never see them again, and it doesn't matter. So it's hard if people kind of. I mean, that's what comedy is. It just weeds out everybody who's not going to stay involved. You know what I mean? Most people that I started with, probably a year or two in, looked around and went, "What? I'm not doing this. This is fucking insane." And then went and did something else more productive, you know?
Well, that's
Who
why
knows?
it's so critical to start when you're young. You
That,
don't know
yeah.
anything and you're not formed, and the whole you haven't lived like the guys who I see who have been in the military or like they've been married and they started getting into comedy to, they have already lived like a life, and then they get into comedy, which is the most juvenile popularity contest with no real rhyme or reason. I mean, the people who last the longest are usually the people who have the most money coming from their family. I mean, it's a horrible fucking game. And those people, those poor, I feel the most sympathy for them, for those kind of people who are the ones who start at 30 or 35 and
Yeah.
then they're like then they get competitive.
Well, and the rejection is harder to take. When you're younger, you bounce back. It's like LSD. You can have a crazy, wacky, bad trip when you're younger, and 2 days later, you're like, "What? Yeah, I'm fine." Whereas if you have that same trip at 35, hi, I'm going to go live in a padded room for the rest of my life. Like you're not coming back. You bounce back quicker as a young person from injury, from insult, from everything, and rejection, especially. You know, I'm devastated by this girl, but oh my God, there's another set of tits. You don't, it doesn't register when you're a kid. So I agree, starting younger is a good idea. And if you're going to start, I would not want to discourage anyone from ever starting. But if you're starting and you're a little bit older, or you feel like you're a little bit older, just know that. Just know going in that you try not to get in that popularity contest kind of, you know, juvenile nonsense that goes on, because you don't really, that's just kind of a side of it. That's not, if you're really doing comedy, you should be focused on doing comedy. You know what I mean? Not what other people are doing.
Well, yeah, that's and someone just asked me to do this interview where you say what advice would you give if you could give. Gosh, I wish someone would have given me this advice, to just try to have fun. Try. It's so hard when you're first starting because you don't know how to do it. But it was such serious business for me, you know.
Early on?
Yeah, I really was
Yeah.
like, oh, this is a Rubik's Cube and I'm going to
Because
figure out.
you had to make it
Well,
in your
yes,
head.
but I Yes, yes, true. Yes. I was terrified of any other kind of profession. I knew I wasn't going to be sitting behind a desk. I knew all this about myself. So there's
Yeah.
those elements, but also because I thought that this was a sprint. I thought I could sprint to the finish because I was young and naive, and I
Yeah.
needed, like, what I could have really used in hindsight is a big brother, like, or a headliner to come to kind of take me aside and say, hey, and by the way, they probably didn't like me very much, those people, being 19 and looking 15 and whatever. But to take me aside and just go, look, try to have fun. You want to have fun. Go on and just try to say what you're thinking or feeling in the moment. Try to learn to do that. And even if you're going to be really bad, either way, it's not going to go well. And it's not going to go well for a long time. But
That doesn't mean you're bad.
well, it doesn't mean you're going to always be bad, but just expect to suck and don't expect too much and try to have fun, and don't get too competitive with other people, because there's no rhyme or reason why. I don't know if you know this, but I did stand up. Gosh, I'd probably been doing stand up for a year or two. No, I hadn't. Maybe about a year I'd been doing stand up, and I did it in college. I went to UCF, University of Central Florida, and the judge of the contest was Daniel Tosh, who was,
Ah,
at the time, his name was DT Tosh. He did not go by Daniel Tosh. And, like, he was a guy who looked like he was gonna, look like he was gonna be an MTV video jockey. He had the two earrings, he looked like a guy who doesn't have to struggle to get pussy,
yeah.
you know? And it would have been, I kind of was looking at it. I was very jealous of this guy. I was like, wow,
He's
he's
got it. He
already,
made it.
well, and he walked around like he made it. Like, he had an attitude like he made it. But that's not my personality. I don't know how to, like, you and I, that's why we're friends, probably, because we are both not like that kind of guy.
I mean, that's probably why I talked to you in the first place, because you're right. I'm not that kind of guy.
The audience wants guys like us. This is the funny thing. The business wants DT Tosh. The business wants guys like that, because business people are attracted to people like that. But the population want guys like us. The population want John Belushi and Bill Murray.
People they can relate to.
Right. So we have to somehow circumnavigate. Right. That's my little bit of wisdom of show business.
Yeah. And also, like, don't be discouraged when you feel like you're not, like, don't compare yourself to other people. And even if you're reaching one person, do you know what I mean? Like, honestly, if you're doing something that you like, if you start a podcast or you start doing stand up, one, don't do it because you want to get rich, because that's stupid and never going to happen. No, probably, for the most part. It's like, I think Kyle Kinane said, I always equate this quote to him, but people say, if I want to, my friend said I should do stand up. And he's like, well, if you're not willing to do stand up comedy for free for the rest of your life, then don't get into it, because sometimes that's what it amounts to. And there's nothing wrong with that. If you are funny and you're making people laugh and it's making you feel good, there's no reason to stop that. You just might have to not make it your full-time gig.
Were you, first of all, okay, a couple questions arise in my mind. Were you hip to this Zen intuition about not being too competitive, or did you get wrapped up in being competitive with others at any point?
Yeah, I was a huge asshole. I mean, it was, I would see somebody get at something and, why the fuck would that piece of shit get off, and just be miserable about it. Like, I literally went through a good chunk of my, mid to late 20s and early 30s with a chip on my shoulder and angry that I wasn't more successful somehow, all at the same time, while sabotaging myself every fucking step of the way. You know what I mean? It was like, it was like a fear, like these people were getting what I wanted and I was afraid that I wouldn't get it, or I was afraid I would get it. And then it took a while, but eventually I saw that was, if anything, just taking years off my life. You know what I mean? If anything,
How
just
about not
making me,
sustainable? Like, that's
yeah,
not sustainable emotion.
it's not, because you also, nobody wants to be around that person. Even if you're not talking out loud, people can feel that shit on you. And if you're that miserable, don't do comedy. There's go get a different job. Like nobody wants to be around. I get it. We like to laugh and complain about how broken fucking shitty everything is, but like in a green room, nobody wants a sad sack and a fucking miserable turd and a fucking guy who's going to complain about everything. And that's just shit's not fun. And a lot of headliners, that's all it is. If they can hang out with you in the green room, you can work with them, you know? And if you don't go up and completely
And it's
piss off
funny,
their audience.
we took different paths. I mean, I didn't see you for a while. We met and we hung out and we were around each other. And then really when, I mean, we'd see each other and bump into each other and talk and text occasionally, but there were a period of years where, and I'm not sure even what those years were, but I know there was a period of years where I think I feel like you became really successful. I started hearing your name and seeing you on stuff and a lot. And I was also writing for Cat, so I had my own little corner of what I thought was kind of like what was your Gotham was that for me. Um,
That's the thing that kept you hanging on.
right. Well, you know, in some ways it was legitimate, and then but in mostly it was a learning experience. But I don't want to get off too much on a tangent. But I went through that too for years, and yeah, I think just age, it was not a sustainable emotion of being wondering why inferior people I thought were inferior to me were, and by the way, that's not a good, like you say, it's not a good personality trait. Um, it's okay to
Because
think and feel that a little bit, but if that overcomes you and me, that's not really who we are, you and I, John.
well, also that's not shouldn't be who anybody is because even if it overcomes you a little bit, you got to know that like everybody's different. And yes, there is a population problem. There are too many people, but there's a room for everyone in all of it. If that makes sense. Like, yes, half of us should be wiped out just to make room for things to grow again, but like the people that are here, there's no reason that I have to be mad because someone else is doing comedy. Do you know what I mean? Like, yes, the clubs are the it's political and how you get in and who you know and all that shit. But like, there's enough space that we can start rooms wherever we want. We can have lineups that we like. We can book who we want. There, you can take things into your own hands and do it your way.
I would say to amend that, to just put an amendment on that, if you are experiencing these feelings, if you are experiencing these feelings, it's not unnatural. And here's the
No, it's
thing:
not.
if you're gonna wield any kind of dangerous material, and I would say these emotions are dangerous material. They're not benign. They're not. Make them really funny. That would be my only advice to a comic. If you can take what you're doing or what you're feeling and make it really funny, you can say anything. But if you can't make it really funny, I would just keep that shit to yourself till you figure out not to.
But also understand that you're going to have those times when you go on stage or you do something where you perform and people are like, "Oof, no, I didn't care for that," and that's because you're still finding your voice. So I would hate for you to keep something to yourself if you feel it needs to be said, but know that even that you think it's funny deep down inside, it might not be right for you in terms of what you're going to, because I think and say a lot of shit that I'm like, I should give this to somebody because it will sound mean coming from me or it will sound cruel coming from me. But if you can give it to someone who has a different delivery. Like I've written a bunch of jokes that I could never use, but if Mitch Hedberg I think said them, I think they would kill.
Well,
But
I heard he's coming back from the dead. So,
that's what I'm hoping. I've got this list of 20 jokes I need to give him.
you know what? That would be a
I just
great
want
animated if you could get someone who did a great Mitch Hedberg impersonation and you could animate it and did John Huck's jokes for Mitch Hedberg.
I'll talk to Lynn. I know
Yeah,
I know
talk to
Lynn a little
Lynn.
bit.
Talk to Lynn. Get her permission.
I'm
Get her
sure
to
there's got
say
to be
her
somebody who
blessing.
can do a dead-on impression of Mitch. There's got to be.
Oh yeah, you know how many comics? When I saw Dimitri Martin in New York before I ever moved to LA, and he was just doing he wasn't doing an impression of Mitch, but he was doing his own. I don't know if you ever saw him very early on, but he was
Yeah, he didn't yeah, he didn't have a guitar, he didn't have the easel, he was just yeah.
jacking the essence of Mitch Hedberg.
Well, I mean,
This is
yeah,
before probably you knew who he was. I was in New York and I did a show with him, and I remember after the show, this is I'm grateful I did it, but looking back, I was an asshole. Um, but I went up to him and I go, if Mitch was here, he'd say, "Just be yourself, man. I already like you." you know,
that's a pretty good
turkey
impression.
pastrami and the turkey bologna and the turkey burgers, and someone's got to tell you just the turkey, just be yourself, man. And he did not think that was funny.
Because he'd probably been hearing it a lot.
Well, maybe,
I
maybe
mean, Mitch was super famous at that point. You know what I
he
mean?
was
Like in
super
the world of
famous at that
comedy,
point.
he
Yeah.
was top fucking 3 or 4 at that point.
Yes, he was.
So yeah, I mean, and I've had people try to do that to me. I do a couple of physical things now that are almost like ticks, but not really. But they get laughs and they kind of fill in space here and there. And I did something one night where I flicked the mic, and because usually I poke it, and I flicked it, and this drunk dude afterwards who starts his conversation with, "Hey, I want to get into comedy," and you can tell his sister's with him, and she's like, "Oh God, please don't." And he keeps talking about how he's going to get into comedy, and I'm like, "Oh great," and I'm trying to be positive, and then he goes, "Hey, so you do Bill Burr's material?" And I'm like, "What?" And then he accuses me of ripping off this mic flick from Bill Burr, and I'm like, "Dude, what?" That's just something I did. I wasn't like thinking about it, and he was like, "Well, Bill
That,
Burr does it," and I go,
that's a little bit kind of, some of that is a little bit of the effect. When was that, by the way? A few years ago?
"This is like a year and a half ago."
So some of that, I think, John, is the effect of the social media comment board, where everybody's a troll now, and everybody thinks the audience aren't audience anymore. They're all like in it. They're all
Yeah,
involved in it.
yeah,
This is weird, man. This is weird. It's hard for
it
someone
is
from our
weird.
generation to understand that. Like, it's easier for younger people to sort of, because that's their world.
They get it. Yeah.
But everybody now is a fucking critic, and anything you do, you stole it from somebody, and it's fuck this guy, he's not original. And
And that's a good you're definitely making good points, and I should give people a little more slack because he probably thinks that he's got a right to walk around and say these things because he's fucking online and people are like, you know, all it takes is one person to agree with somebody and that person to go, "Oh yeah, this person agrees, I'm fucking right." And then you're like, "Oh God, here we go." So again, pros and cons of social media. The cons are definitely that it can really seem like people feel there is no border or um, where I end and you begin kind of deal. Like they're like, well, if you responded to me online, we're friends. It's like, dude, I got friends I don't talk to online. Like that doesn't mean anything. It's like I'm just trying to show support, be grateful, and interact with people that I think are have um, the right intentions with how they're interacting. You know what I mean? I'm not going to go after someone who's tries to comment like make fun of something that I've done in a way that I'm like, dude, I can tell you're being negative and I'm not going to engage you because I don't give a fuck what you think.
John, when you become massively famous, will you and you know what I love about this is I don't ask anybody questions. Like, I don't have written down questions, but your discourse is like actually manifesting questions in my.
That's perfect.
It's amazing how this is working. You might be the first one to do this. John, when you become massively famous, will you retreat into hermitage, or will you be a comment board accessible personality?
I don't know if you could hear that, but I just farted. Um,
Oh no.
I I think you know what, that's a good question because I don't know. Like I just started this
You
podcast and
haven't thought
people,
that far ahead.
well, first of all, the idea of me being really famous isn't something I'm gonna give a lot of thought to, but starting this podcast, people want to interact. They want to tell you that they like it, they're into it, and I want to interact with those people. So I want to be, but at a certain point, you look at a guy like Dan Cummins who gets, thousands upon thousands of views and comments, and he can't respond to every one of those. Not because he's a bad person, because he's a human being with a limited amount of time in a day. So while I can, I want to be accessible, and I want people to know that I appreciate the support that I'm getting from them and that they're watching and whatever. But ideally, at a certain point, I answer everything with blanket, "Thank you guys, I appreciate it. I can't get to all your stuff right now, But I do want to. I still would like to be accessible. I just don't want to argue, and I don't want people. I'll take criticism, and sometimes it might be something like, okay, I get that, but other times you want to just be like, nah, you can fuck off, but it's still valid.
Okay, so I think the longer answer, I will interpret
Sorry.
your answer as this. He will start out as a ideally accessible
I'll try. I'm
personality
gonna do
and
my best.
flip into hermitage as he realizes the treacherous
Well,
road of engaging with people who have little to little
but
to
see,
nothing to offer.
but that's the thing is, I can retreat into hermitage and comment and be accessible online. Like, I could never leave my house again and still be able to. Thanks for watching.
Okay, well, I can tell you this. I have thought about these things. This is why one of the reasons I love you, that you haven't given any of this thought. I have thought about this, and I probably will either hire somebody to run my shit, or I will just delete it altogether and go live.
I think that's the ultimate. If you're like Brad Pitt, you don't use social media. You're Brad Pitt. You know what I mean? Like, there's that feeling. Like, I get that, but I will never be Brad Pitt. And I don't think my personality lends itself to being a guy who shuts himself off from other people. Like,
But Bill Murray did. I love using this example, by the way, and I don't know why it keeps coming up so much, but Bill
Bill
Murray
Murray's fucking awesome.
doesn't even have a fucking. You can't even get a hold of him. His loved ones can't even get a hold of him. So that's an example of a guy who cut himself off before this shit even existed.
But he's also like, that guy's magic. You know what I mean?
He's magic. I know.
It's hilarious, dude. It's like,
Chicago, man. Chicago puts out interesting people, man. Interesting people come out of our area.
you know what someone said to me? I was talking to somebody at the airport once. This is years ago, just a random person at the airport bar. And I said something, he said something, I said something again, kind of making fun of him. He goes, you're from the Midwest? And I go, yeah. And sometimes I sound like I'm from Chicago. So I thought he was hearing my accent or whatever. And I was like, yeah. And he goes, basement humor. And I was like, at first I was like, is this guy calling me a lowbrow turd? Like, 5 beers, and I'm thinking, am I gonna fight a dude at the airport? And I go, I go, excuse me? And he goes, you had a basement growing up? I go, yeah. And he goes, what'd you guys do in the winter? And I go, well, I can hung out in basements. And he goes, yeah, and you made fun of each other, right? And I go, yeah. He goes, basement humor. It's humor that grew out of Midwest basements, people trapped inside during the winter. You're with your high school friends, getting high, drinking beers, whatever. But all there is to do is make fun of each other. We didn't have the internet. We're not Googling YouTube videos. We're like, hey, dickhead, nice shirt. And we're making fun of that shirt for like 25 minutes, getting all the good zingers in.
That's
Who
fucking.
shot the couch?
That's awesome. Well, John, I probably have other questions for you, but I think what we'll do is we'll hold them off till season 3 because we want to do
Ooh.
another John Huck. And by the way, ladies and
Where are
gentlemen,
they now?
I want to point this out before we end this thing. John was supposed to be a guest on season 1, but when we were time for taping, he was not in a place where he could do
Not
it. I don't
feeling
want
it.
you to think this fucking funny basement humor guy, this basement humor purist was not invited until season 2, right? John, you can.
No, you were correct. You hit me up right away, and I had to be honest with you. At that time, with everything that was going on, I was kind of abstaining from trying to be funny. You know what I mean? I just was not feeling it. And not that you were asking me to clown it up or yuck it up, but I also didn't
No,
want to be some sad sack.
Yeah, you were. It was right around George Floyd. It was right
Yeah.
around the George Floyd thing, and you were like, it's not going to be good for either of us to. But I just want people to know that you were a short list of white comedians, of my short list of white comedians who I admire and feel like anything I do could be, you could be incorporated into. You were right on that very short list, brother, right at
I
the top.
appreciate that, man. I appreciate that.
So go ahead and give us your first of all, tell us what you're working on right now.
Right now, I have a new podcast out called Speaking Highly with John Huck, where we celebrate what's great. We talk about everything and anybody who makes the world a more positive, inspiring, and entertaining place to live. Our first episode was about podcasts with Dan Cummins. Episode 2 comes out soon, and it will be designated drivers with Eddie Pence. And then I'm writing some jokes, and I'm trying to get out, do more comedy on Zoom, but it's slow and hard.
So I love you, man. So go ahead and for people so they can have the Bill Murray experience on social media. Where can they find you all across your social
All
media platforms?
On Twitter, it's at JONHUCK, just one word, at John Huck. On Instagram, it is at JON_HUCK. I wouldn't worry too much about Facebook. The Instagram and Twitter are the good ones. If you're looking for me on Facebook, I'm there, John Huck Comedian or something, I think.
That's
John
where I
Huck
see you,
1.
man, because I don't really go on those other places. So I
Oh,
can
really? Oh,
testify that the Facebook is the one that makes me laugh.
then I think it's John Huck 1
Okay,
on Facebook.
one. Well, if they put in JONHUCK, you're
I'll pop up, yeah, for
he's
sure.
the most famous John Huck in the United States of America.
Well, that spells my name this way. There's a news anchor in Vegas named JOHNHUCK.
Oh, fuck him.
And then there's a watercolorist and a sound mixer in LA who spells it the same way I do.
Well, you know what? If you go do shows in Vegas, there are a lot of people who are not going to know they're seeing you. And that, my friend, would be the greatest practical Andy Kaufman type thing. That's as close as you
start doing news from the stage. Dude, that'd be great.
John Huck live in Vegas could be a great comedy special for that exact reason. I'm telling you. I would love to be attached as a producer with that idea.
Oh, okay. It's your idea.
John Huck live from Las Vegas. They all came to see the fucking weatherman.
I don't know if that's an insult. He's a news anchor. I don't know if they get insulted by like, I'm not a fucking weatherman. If that's a thing, like, I don't know if they get mad at that.
Oh my God, dude.
It's like, this guy's a mime. He's like, I'm a magician, asshole. Like, oh, sorry.
You know the fucked up thing? He's probably doing some open mics trying to get that second career started.
You remember when Fritz Coleman was doing comedy?
Who?
The weatherman for KCAL?
No.
Oh, Fritz Coleman. Was doing a show at the Friars Club, and they're like, hey, you're gonna have to go on a little bit later. Fritz Coleman is here. I'm like, oh my God. I go, this guy's got the same name as the weatherman. And then the weatherman walks in. I'm like, Fritz Coleman. And he goes up and literally did 15 minutes of weather jokes that were funny, but he basically made fun of people for needing a weatherman. He's like, I get paid to do a job that you could do by looking outside.
Oh, he was funny.
Yeah, he was very funny.
Did you ever see Kato Kalin do stand-up?
Yes, I did. Yeah. He brought me up one night. One night. He said, oh, my really good friend, John Buck. And that's how you know I'm real tight with someone when they don't know my last name.
He was introducing you.
Yeah. But I'd met him before. He was a nice guy.
Yeah, he is a nice guy. And he wasn't a bad comic. And like the weatherman, he made fun of all his serial killer friends.
He made fun of his poor living choices and where he moved and why he shouldn't be living there.
I did he had a local television show, and I was a guest on his guest on his television show. And he goes, do you guys like football? And I don't know how we got in this conversation, but you know me, my personality. This is like 7 or 8 years ago. I go, the highest rated show on TV is Sunday Night Football. Did you know that? And he goes, no, I didn't know that. He goes, why is that? I go, well, it's the only time women and men are both watching television together. Probably. And that made him really uncomfortable. Like because he thought it was going to, I don't know why that made him uncomfortable, but anyway. All right. I'm just babbling on now.
But that doesn't make any sense. Okay.
You mean the Sunday Night Football thing? I might have just been pulling that out of my ass. I don't know.
Well, no, but I mean, I can understand that thinking where it's like, it's probably families are watching. There's more people. It's one TV. You're gathered in one area. You know what I mean? Like, that's why the ratings might be higher.
Well, I was making fun because from my point of view, only women watch television at that point. Like men, there was nothing on television for men to watch. Like, what the fuck are we watching on network?
Yeah, that part of it would have gone over my head because I've been watching TV forever. It doesn't
Right.
matter.
Well, that wouldn't apply to you. John Huck is
I've
still a man watching television.
Dude, I watched 4 seasons of Designing Women. I think I can sit through just
Holy
about
shit.
anything.
Okay, can you give us some shows we wouldn't expected you to be a fan of? Real quick.
Well,
Here we go.
I will. I'll give them to you. And then these shows they were on in a block. I had cancer when I was 19. I went through like 4 months of chemo that was like kind of knocked me out. So I would spend a lot of time just on my parents' couch, just recovering. And every day during the week was this block of Doogie Howser, Designing Women, Happy Days, which makes sense that I would like Happy Days.
Those were
And
reruns.
then, yeah, oh yeah. These were all reruns. None of this was first run. So, and then, shit, there was one other show that was kind of weird that maybe it was more Designing Women, but that block kind of got switched around here and there, and I watched those shows religiously for 6-7 months.
So
A lot of them.
now this was daytime, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so for me it was, and I'm sorry that we're not going to unpack the whole cancer thing at the end of the podcast
Oh,
here.
no, it's okay. Testicular, I'm fine. It's all good.
The one ball, and by the way, these are part of John's stories. You can catch him. By the way, is there a website?
Yeah, you can go to johnhuck.me. That'll take you to everything I got, pretty much.
Okay, and if you see him live, you will get the one ball story, probably when he comes. You have some jokes about it.
I do. I don't know that I do them anymore, but yes.
Okay, well, we're gonna pull that out for live in Las Vegas.
Fucking perfect.
So for me, it was Perry Mason,
Ooh,
Magnum, and Simon would all come on together, and I think it might have been WGN, brother. Might have been WGN in the middle of the day when Cubs games weren't on.
Dude, Simon, what
I fucking love that show, man.
But wasn't the premise that they were supposed to be giving people good news that they'd won the lottery, and that and then they had to solve crimes? Or am I crazy? What was
No, you're crazy. It was fucking, that might have been one episode, but no, it was that sounds like you were really high.
What did those guys do? What did Simon and Simon do?
No, Simon and Simon was like a guy who there were two brothers. One brother looked like fucking Chuck Norris, and the other brother was Gerald McRaney. I don't know how those two guys were brothers. It's never explained, but they were Simon and Simon, and it was like Magnum PI with two brothers, basically. They would go be funny and goofy and solve crimes. So that it was, that's it. That's what it was.
I don't think I ever saw a full episode of Simon and Simon.
Well, I saw enough for both of us. Don't worry.
I'll take your word for it.
But, whenever I was suspended from school or sick, when my parents weren't home, that's what I would sit and watch, Anyway. All right, dude. I think we've come to the end. This has been a good long one.
Yeah, dude. I'm a rambler.
Joining me, brother.
Dude, thanks for having me, man. It's good to see you, dude. Good to talk to you.
You too, my man. We'll have you back for. Is there anything you want to share with us before we go?
No, just check out my podcast, Speaking Highly, with John Huck on YouTube.
On YouTube, just like us, and soon to be on Apple Podcasts and other places, perhaps.
It's there too, yeah. Wherever podcasts are podcasting.
All right, and hey, No Idea Zone, thanks for checking in. Remember to subscribe to John's channel and to my channel on YouTube. We get paid, really. That's actually like our income, so please subscribe. And John, thanks for being here, brother. And
Dude,
No Idea Zone audience, we'll see you next week.
Hey, everybody. I hope you enjoyed whatever you saw on our channel today. Make sure to like, comment, and share everything you see here. And please hit that big red subscribe button. You have no idea how much it helps the No Idea Zone every time you hit that button. Thanks again, and we'll see you on the next installment of the No Idea Zone.